So the topic today I want to speak about is living with others. And this is a real art when we begin a practice to be able to learn how to adeptly live with others, live amongst others in our happiest, brightest ways, because there is a lot going on out there in the world today, a lot. And one of the most obvious things is the world is getting more and more populated. And yes, you can have an awesome career and success, and money can buy you a little bubble of space, even maybe potentially an island, but inevitably, you will still have to come across others in your living here on this planet Earth. So I wanted to kind of share some tips and pointers on how to live in this world, live with others in whatever scenarios and situations that arise in our day-to-day lives. And a couple things I want to emphasize here and lay down is, if you think of like building a home, of a structure, you have to create foundation, right? Then you build the walls, then you have like the delineation of rooms and how the house will actually flow, and when people walk in, where will guests stay, where will you live, bathroom, all those functioning things. And that's the same thing that happens when we are living with others. We build that foundation first with ourselves. And I think a lot of times that piece is very missed in spiritual practice and spiritual teachings. Yes, they talk about focusing on yourself, practice and so forth like that. But then I feel like very quickly turns into, how do we generate compassion for others? Like we take whatever we can, from the teachings, and then we start to, okay, how do I emphasize compassion to others that I come across? Because there is a lot of pain and suffering in the world. And so coming back to focus on ourselves is actually a key cornerstone in the foundation of practice and this path. And when I talk about coming back to yourself, that foundational piece is very much learning how to recenter yourself in a place of self-balance when we get knocked off our center. And we have to come to map out internally in ourselves what are the navigational points that, oh, when I see this sign within myself, this is what is starting to happen. This is the road I'm starting to travel down. Like if I'm starting to feel a little bit more irritable in my comments to another person, that instantly is a navigational point for us to be in our mindfulness practice. Okay, am I feeling like I'm hungry? I need to eat something, right? Am I tired? Am I overwhelmed and overstimulated right now that I need to actually go take a moment and be by myself, right? These are all things that we implement tools wise to recenter ourselves. And that is a continual and constant process that never stops. That self-discovery piece. You're always learning more things about yourself. And a great thing to kind of hold in the back of your mind to have a bright way to approach that self-discovery is intending for clarity, right? In your life with yourself. And that can extend to others. So self-practice is first foundational piece. And that self-practice comes with that mindfulness piece of what is happening within yourself. And of course, that comes with self-honesty. It's very easy for our ego to co-sign bullshit in our lives. Very easy. And if we are genuinely working a personal practice, the beautiful thing usually happens is there is support around us, whether that's a teacher, a mentor, a community. And those are wonderful things to utilize and implement into your life because it helps to keep the co-signing of bullshit to a very minimum, or it lessens it at least. So in this self-honesty piece, what I want to highlight is personal responsibility. I think sometimes we really forget how much influence in a very powerful way that we have on others around us. It makes me think of like a martial arts analogy. In Aikido, on the black belt test, at the very end of the test, when you're absolutely exhausted, what happens is Sensei will put you on one side of the mat and he'll line up three other attackers. And then he says, go. And they all attack you all at the same time. It's utter chaos. It's supposed to be totally overwhelming and stress inducing. And the initial response from the ego and the body is run. You know, run. I want to get out of this place. I want to get away from these attackers. You know, self-preservation. So when we first start to train in this situation, you see a lot of black belts or people who are training to be black belts to kind of like be in this running away situation of running away from their attackers. But guess what happens? You're on this martial arts mat. It's only so big and you only can run so far. And guess what? They're always coming to attack you. It doesn't stop until Sensei says stop. So you learn that, okay, I have to face this situation. Now, if I have to face this situation, how do I do it well? How do I do it proficiently, successfully, even if possible, right? And you engage various techniques and all the stuff like that. But that moment that shifts into, oh my goodness, okay, when this situation is set up as it is, I become that gravitational center that will be drawing in attackers because they are focused on you and you're the target and they will be attacking you. So no matter where you are on the martial arts mat, you recognize that you have to be in a centered, stable place of being okay with yourself to be able to then address whatever the situation that is coming towards you, right? And this is, of course, meant to be in a high stress, high intense situation. But it's a great metaphor for life. And this is the piece that I referenced back to with personal responsibility is if we have not been doing our own practice, if we have not been practicing the proper techniques and we've been bullshitting ourselves and we've been getting away with mediocrity. Oh, I just kind of slid in on that one. Oh, I just barely got by. That comes to, I don't want to say harm, but it comes to not be a beneficial thing when you are in that high stress, uh, overwhelming situation. So the personal responsibility is coming back to ourselves and working from a place of impeccability. You know, that also is the other piece around self-honesty. And that impeccability is when we do get overwhelmed and we get angry, because we aren't perfect. No one is. We feel these emotions, some kind of response comes out. Maybe we say a hurtful thing. Maybe we do some kind of hurtful behavior, right? Obviously, we don't mean to. We feel terrible afterwards, right? Apologies are exchanged. The personal responsibility that I'm speaking about is not just a verbal exchange of trying to amend the situation. The deeper piece around that is behaviors. So if I'm saying, I'm a vegetarian now, I really want to eat vegetables, I want to respect animals and so forth like that. That's a verbal, right, agreement that I'm putting out there of how I will behave. But then if I go to a restaurant and you go with me and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a medium rare steak," the behaviors are not congruent. And when those behaviors are not in alignment with what we are speaking through our speech, it highlights where we are not only out of balance, but where we are not being honest, where maybe we haven't made a real clear assessment of what is happening. Maybe we want to be a vegetarian, but currently our body still wants red meat. So that's something I really want to kind of hone in on in regards to this big piece of living with others. When we can cultivate such a high level of personal responsibility and bring all the things into alignment of body, speech, and mind that comes through in our behaviors, the influence that we then have with others is likened to that martial arts Aikido situation where the three attackers are coming towards you. But when you have that impeccability with yourself first, you're able to address all those attackers well, well. So just on a more basic level in living with others, we start with ourselves, create and develop our own personal power. So we have a sense of capacity and ability to handle stress. We grow stronger in that way. And then we further our personal responsibility along with that. Because the good thing or bad thing, however you want to look at it, is this path and practice is a refinement of ourselves. And that refinement means that it brings up things that we don't want to look at. It brings up beliefs that we bought into and are a lie and or don't work for us with how we want to move forward in our life. And that can be jarring. I recognize that. But the beautiful thing about following through with the alignment piece of personal responsibility and stuff and accountability, the personal power not only increases, but your ability to influence others through your gravitational pull, if you will, is tremendous. I can't even begin to explain. You have to try it out for yourself to have an experience. And I really encourage you that you do that. And that is in just kind of like a more relational piece. That could be with family members, partners, right? Children, kids, coworkers. And similar structures of this also applies to kind of organizations and communities. And in structures of communities and stuff like that, I think of the word discipline. And when I think of discipline, you might have a lot of different thoughts and ideas, but what I have come to understand around discipline is it is the walls in the house, in the home that you've built, in the business building office that you have that directs and flows the energy of how it will move through that structure. The discipline includes the rules, the expectations, the protocol, procedures, and principles. And those walls will change, right? No, walls can get knocked down and rebuilt in other ways, and they can renovate a home, right? And have a different flow of energy through that. And that discipline in an organizational structure starts very much from the top down, right? Like water flowing from the top of the mountain. And I recognize that it can feel very heavy of a responsibility for the leadership in position. And the reality of the thing is leadership usually is a process where we all started as white belts in some way, shape, or form in the martial arts dojo. And from that white belt, through our training, through our tests and so forth like that, we moved up the different ranks, and now we are a black belt and whatever degree black belt, so that you're potentially at an instructor teaching level, right, at the dojo. That brings forth this leadership piece. So leadership is a wonderful, amazing place to be if that is where you are and you have roles in your life. And sometimes I recognize it can be frustrating because the newer students or white belts come in and they have their ideas of how they're going to train in martial arts. And sometimes your phone goes to your face. You're like, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? But at the same time, you have a good laugh probably with the other senior students in leadership because you recognize in a very compassionate way, oh my gosh, I did that. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that to my teacher, right? And it can be a funny thing to have a sense of humor about. But I think with leadership, it goes back to kind of the beginning again, if you will, on a circle, where you come back to it for the first time. You may be, a senior student, a black belt, deep behind the ranks. Maybe you're an instructor at the dojo, but at your level of practice, even though you're at that different level, you're still have that beginning qualities, those foundational cornerstones that we started with, right? And they will look different. They don't have to look the same. Please don't misunderstand that. It will look different in how you do your self assessment. It will look different how you recenter yourself so that you can be of greater service to others. It will look different when you need to increase your own personal power, right? It might not be the exact recipe that was used for when we were white belts to increase that. And so what I'm saying is leadership has their responsibility to be accountable for their continued practice and refinement, still ongoing and never stop. And that will include when there's multiple people in a leadership role to have that collaboration of minds of a real self-honest discussion. Because at the level of leadership, things become very subtle. And this is where self-honesty and peer honesty, right, with your respected peers is so important, as well as with feedback from students. Like it's like you're at the center of the circle and everyone has some kind of say, some kind of seeing, some kind of perspective. And as a senior student instructor, our ability to be open to all of that, hear each of one of them in their own valid way and really look, okay, is there something that they are pointing out that I do need to adjust so that I can refine myself, that therefore then I can have a better influence and effect for the organization. So then it comes back again to the alignment piece. I think it's also very interesting as maybe I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with is in leadership positions, there tends to be politics. And I wish that wasn't the case, but to be the case everywhere I've gone and seen. And politics, I feel like, as a very simple way to explain it, are egos that are still present, and how to navigate the politics in a leadership role adeptly has a couple components. I think there goes into how do you hold structure without being rigid, right? So you have the adaptability piece. But then you're not so organic and free flowing that the white belts are all of a sudden running the show in the dojo. You're like, wait, what happened? The mob has been created and they're taking over. How do we affect and influence and implement what we want into the dojo environment so that the students have a great experience? Again, I harp and harbor and mention and focus on the behaviors piece. I'm learning that even more as I refine my own personal practice. It's so easy and it happens very often for us to correct with words someone else or even ourselves, make a comment. Oh, you shouldn't wear blue. That doesn't look good. You should wear white, right? And yet here you're all dressed in blue or something like that. So there's very easy to verbalize and have a behavior that's out of alignment. And when we can dial that into an impeccable way of words and behaviors in every aspect of your life, like every strand of life, wow, that's pretty dang powerful. And that's something there for how we can live with others in a beautiful and successful way. Right. And at the end of the day, if we're going back to kind of like organizations or systems in place where people aren't doing what they're supposed to, there is their accountability and responsibility that has to be pushed upon. Like, these are the rules around boundaries, expectations. Can you meet these? Are these realistic for you? Yes, have a discussion. And after a time frame of 3 months, 3 weeks, whatever it is, and their behaviors haven't changed, it's a big navigational pointer of a flag to say, okay, maybe this isn't for you, right? Because there also comes down to the very, as we're trying to be very loving and encompassing of all the colors of the spectrum on the rainbow, in some ways, there is this very black and white, clear line. Like, you're not doing that. Well, I can't. There's all these excuses. We know all of them, I'm sure. If you don't, then you'll hear more as you go along in life. And the excuses will come. And it becomes this, well, you didn't do it. And therefore, this is no longer working, that very black and white. And I love actually that black and white piece when you think of like the yin, yang, circle with that line scrolling through the center, right? Is that delineation allows things to end and allow beginnings to happen for ourselves and for others, for an organization, for relationships, for so many things. And so there's no need to be afraid of that either, for things to be black and white and nope, you messed up. Oh, I messed up. Okay, what do I need to do? I'm encountering, experiencing, friends who have kids and this parenting dynamic of living with others. Parents, adults have kids now. They have to live with their other, which is their child, which could be a teenager, and they're adulting and trying to individuate, right? And I see often in my work in therapy and stuff like that, that parents will say, okay, can you please see my child, my problem, some troublesome child? Can you fix them on this? And in the family, the parents and or other siblings identify this individual to be the problem of everything. And it's fascinating because what I have seen over and over again is the rebelliousness of that teenager or misbehaving child is a direct mirror for the parents and or the system of like where they're out of alignment, where they are not being in integrity and being impeccable of how they are relating with themselves and others. Parent will be like, they need to be more respectful and something, or whatever it is. And yet they themselves have if the child is requesting boundaries. I need you to tell me one time that dinner is ready. I don't need you to tell me 10 times and then come knock on my door and then give me a full lecture and then get in my face and then, all that amped up angst. And so you question, how are the parents being respectful of the child or the teenager's boundaries when they've mentioned that I only need a one-time reminder. But the parent's compulsion of got to tell them 3 times that dinner is getting cold. You have to come down for dinner. You're not going to be with us, right? This their own compulsion that they're not able to control. And because they're not able to control that, they try to control their outside external circumstances. And that's something that we learned very quickly in the world of psychotherapy is you cannot control other people, places, things. You can only influence them. And that's the same way. But you can influence in a very powerful way. That goes back to that Aikido metaphor that I mentioned. So check in with yourself or others if you're noticing situations like where is there maybe a misalignment? Where is there maybe words that are being exchanged, but the behaviors aren't being backed up? And if we can change those behaviors, golden nugget there. Something cool might happen.